I never believed in ghosts until last year. I mean, I watched all those paranormal shows and thought they were entertaining, but I always figured they were just making stuff up for ratings. Now, I don't know what to believe anymore. My boyfriend Jason and I had been dating for about 2 years when we decided to move in together. We were both tired of paying separate rents, and his family home in Cedarbrook, Nebraska, was sitting empty after his parents moved to Arizona for retirement. It seemed perfect, a whole house to ourselves with no rent, just utilities and maintenance. Cedarbrook is tiny, maybe 2,000 people tops, and super isolated. The nearest Walmart is 45 minutes away, but I was excited for the quiet and the chance to save some money. The first night in that house changed everything. We set up in Jason's old bedroom. It was the largest one with the most closet space. Everything was normal that evening. We unpacked some boxes, ordered pizza from the only delivery place in town, and went to bed around 11. I remember falling asleep easily, but I woke up at 3:17 in the morning. I know because I checked my phone, feeling like someone was sitting on my chest. Not just a little pressure, but like a full-grown person was straddling me, pressing down hard. I couldn't breathe properly. I tried to wake Jason, but my arm felt so heavy I could barely move it. The worst part, when I closed my eyes to try calming myself down, I saw flashes of horrible things. A face with no features, just smooth skin where eyes and a mouth should be. A hallway that stretched impossibly long, hands reaching through walls. It was like nightmares were being projected onto my eyelids. I eventually managed to calm down enough to fall back asleep, but when I woke up in the morning, I had 3 small bruises on my arm that definitely weren't there the day before. I told Jason about it over coffee, trying to laugh it off as a weird dream, but I could tell he was uncomfortable. He changed the subject quickly, and we went about unpacking more boxes. The next night, same thing happened, and the night after that. Always around 3 in the morning, always the chest pressure, always the visions when I closed my eyes, always new bruises in the morning, small ones, like someone had grabbed me too hard with their fingertips. About a week after moving in, I was feeling suffocated by the house. It was early August and hot as hell, so around 1:30 in the morning, I went outside to get some fresh air. Jason followed me out, and we sat on the front porch steps, looking at the stars. That's when it happened. Jason's car was parked in the driveway about 20 feet from us. All of a sudden, the hazard lights started flashing, not in a regular pattern like normal hazards. They were blinking erratically, like someone was playing with the button, on, off, on, off, on, off, on. "Did you leave your keys in the car?" I asked Jason. He shook his head slowly. "No. And the hazard button is broken anyway. Has been for months. It only works if you physically hold it down." We both stared at the car. The lights kept flashing their random pattern. "There's someone by the car," Jason whispered suddenly. "I can see a hand by the dashboard." I couldn't see anything, but the hair on my arms stood straight up. We both got up and started walking toward the car, and the second we took our first steps, the hazard lights stopped. Just like that. We looked at each other and ran the rest of the way. The car was empty. The doors were locked. The keys were inside the house on the kitchen counter where Jason had left them. We popped the hood and checked. The hazard button was still broken, the plastic cracked and loose, just like it had been for months. I was freaked out, but Jason seemed almost resigned, like he wasn't surprised. We went back inside, and I was so wound up I decided to make some tea to calm my nerves. I was standing at the kitchen counter, waiting for the kettle to boil, when I felt it. Fingers, gentle but unmistakable, grazing down my spine from the nape of my neck to the small of my back. I jumped and spun around, but there was nothing there except Jason standing in the doorway watching me. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Something just touched me," I said, my voice shaking, like fingers down my back. Jason's face went pale. He walked over to where I'd been standing and turned his back to the room. After a few seconds, he flinched hard. "I felt it too," he whispered. "Same thing, fingers down my back." That night, we moved the mattress into the guest room. I was afraid Jason would think I was being ridiculous, but he helped without question. For 3 nights, everything was fine. No chest pressure, no visions, no bruises, no phantom touches. But one afternoon, I needed to grab some clothes from the closet in the original bedroom. The second I stepped through the doorway, I felt cold, like walking into a freezer. It was August in Nebraska. Nothing should have felt that cold. I hurried to the closet, and as I was reaching for a sweater, I felt those fingers again, this time trailing across my exposed forearm. I told Jason I refused to go into that room again, especially at night. He nodded like this made perfect sense to him. "Jason," I said finally, "what aren't you telling me?" He sighed and sat down on the couch, patting the spot next to him. When I sat down, he took a deep breath. "My family has always known this house has something in it. They call it a ghost, but I don't know what it is. My mom swears it lives mainly in the garage and only comes into the house sometimes. My dad says it's just old relatives checking in on us." "And you never thought to mention this before we moved in?" I tried not to shout. I didn't think it would bother us. It never really bothered me growing up. Sometimes things would move or I'd hear noises, but nothing like what you're experiencing. The next morning, I was in the shower when the bathroom light started flickering, on off, faster and faster, until I was practically in a strobe light. I called for Jason, and the second he opened the bathroom door, the light stabilized. Later that same day, we were sitting in the living room when the front door, which always slammed shut if you didn't close it carefully because of the way it caught the wind, slowly swung open, not like it had blown open in the breeze, but like someone had pushed it from the outside. We both watched it open all the way until it gently touched the wall behind it. There was nobody there. That night, Jason finally told me the rest of what he knew. "My mom thinks one of the ghosts is my twin," he said quietly. "Your what?" "My twin brother. He died early in the pregnancy. Mom says she's always felt him around, even before I was born. She used to try to talk to him when I was little." I didn't know what to say to that. It was sad, but also terrifying to think that whatever was touching me and sitting on my chest might be the spirit of Jason's unborn twin. "There's more," Jason continued. "Remember my friend Cody who died in that bike accident when we were 15? I nodded. Jason had told me about him before. About a month after he died, really weird stuff started happening in the house. Lights turning on and off, doors opening and closing. My mom got out her Ouija board one night and he trailed off." "And what?" I prompted. "And we asked if it was Cody, and the planchette moved to yes. We asked him questions that only Cody would know the answers to, and it got them all right. I tried to process this. So you think your dead twin brother and your dead friend are both haunting this house, and one or both of them are specifically targeting me?" Jason looked miserable. "I don't know. Maybe they don't like that I brought someone new here, or maybe they're just trying to communicate and don't know how to do it without scaring you." For a week after that conversation, things were relatively quiet. The occasional light flicker, a door closing on its own, but nothing directly targeting me. I started to think maybe whatever it was had accepted my presence. Then we made the mistake of talking about moving out. We were in the kitchen discussing whether we should look for our own place, maybe in Lincoln, where there were more job opportunities. The second Jason said, "So we should start packing up next weekend." An empty soda can flew off the counter and hit the wall. We both froze. "That could have been a draft," I said weakly. Then my full deodorant container launched itself from the bathroom down the hall, sailed through the kitchen doorway, and smashed into the fridge, cracking the plastic cap. Over the next hour, at least a dozen objects moved on their own, some sliding across surfaces, others flying through the air. It was like a temper tantrum. Nothing directly hit either of us, but it was clear whatever was in that house did not want us to leave. That night, the chest pressure came back worse than ever. I woke up gasping for air, feeling like I was being crushed. Jason tried to hold me, tried to calm me down, but nothing helped. The visions when I closed my eyes were clearer this time. I could see a teenage boy on a bike, Cody, I assumed, and beside him a figure that looked eerily like Jason, but wrong somehow, distorted, like looking at Jason through warped glass. The next morning, I had bruises on both arms, my legs, and a perfect handprint on my left shoulder blade that Jason photographed because I couldn't see it clearly in the mirror. I told Jason I couldn't stay another night. He agreed, and we packed overnight bags and went to a motel 30 minutes away. As we were driving out of town, I swear I saw two figures standing in the road watching our car, one tall, one shorter. By the time Jason slowed down, there was nothing there. It's been 8 months since we left that house. We never went back except once in daylight with Jason's parents and a local pastor to get our essential belongings. The pastor blessed the house while we were there, but I still felt eyes on me the whole time, and when we were leaving I heard a whisper directly in my ear. He's ours. Jason's parents have moved back in now, and they say everything is normal. They've never experienced what we did. Sometimes I wonder if it was all in my head, but then I remember the hazard lights, the flying objects, the handprint bruise, the way Jason felt the same touch as I did. I still have nightmares about that bedroom, about the pressure on my chest and the cold fingers on my skin. Jason and I are still together, living in an apartment in Lincoln now, but sometimes I catch him staring into empty corners of rooms, like he's looking for something or someone. I don't know if it was Jason's twin brother or his friend Cody or something else entirely that was in that house. I just know that whatever it was, it wanted Jason to stay. And sometimes when Jason sleeps particularly deeply and doesn't respond when I try to wake him, I worry that part of him stayed behind after all. Story 23. I still can't believe what happened to me in Florence 3 years ago. I've tried telling this story to a few close friends, but the reactions are always the same. Either they think I'm making it up, or they get uncomfortable and change the subject. I figured maybe writing it down here might help me process it, and maybe some of you have experienced something similar. My wife Jen and I had been planning this trip to Italy for years. We finally saved enough money and convinced our best friends Dave and Lisa to join us. We were so excited. First Rome, then Florence, and finishing in Venice. The perfect 2-week Italian adventure. The Florence portion of our trip started normally enough. We checked into this sleek modern hotel near the train station for our first night. Nothing special, just your standard tourist accommodations with those key cards and identical rooms you could find anywhere in the world. The plan was to stay there for our entire 3-day visit, but when we tried extending our reservation at the front desk, they apologetically informed us they were fully booked for the following nights due to some international business conference. Dave, always the problem solver of our group, pulled up his phone and started searching for alternatives. After about 15 minutes, he found this place called Hotel Firenze Antico in the historic district, just a 10-minute walk from the Duomo. The price was surprisingly reasonable, especially for the location. We booked it on the spot. The next morning, we checked out early, stored our luggage at the first hotel, and spent the day exploring. We visited the Uffizi Gallery, saw Michelangelo's David at the Accademia, and walked across the Ponte Vecchio. By late afternoon, we were exhausted, but happy, ready to check into our new accommodations. When we arrived at the Hotel Firenze Antico, I immediately sensed something different about the place. Unlike our previous generic hotel, this building had character. Weathered stone exterior, heavy wooden doors, and intricate ironwork on the windows. The lobby was small but elegant, with high ceilings, marble floors, and antique furniture that looked genuinely old, not reproductions. Dave handled the check-in process while the rest of us collapsed into some velvet armchairs in the corner of the lobby. I was too restless to sit still, though, so I wandered around, looking at the various framed photographs and documents on the walls. That's when I noticed a small glass display case containing what looked like a timeline of the building's history, complete with old photographs and newspaper clippings. I'm a bit of a history buff, so I was immediately drawn to it. According to the display, the building was constructed in the late 16th century as the residence of some wealthy merchant family. In the early 1800s, it was converted into a convent for some religious order I'd never heard of. Then, during some war, I think it was World War I, it served as a hospital for wounded soldiers. The most unsettling part came next. From 1923 to 1958, it functioned as a mental asylum. After that, it went back to being a regular hospital until the 1980s, when it was finally converted into a hotel. I remember thinking, well, that checks all the horror movie boxes, and almost called Jen over to show her. But I stopped myself, knowing how she gets about that kind of stuff. She's always been sensitive to anything remotely supernatural, refuses to watch horror movies, won't participate in Ouija boards, that sort of thing. I didn't want to freak her out on our vacation, especially since we'd already paid for the room. When Dave came over with our keys, actual metal keys, not key cards, he mentioned that the staff had apologized for putting us on different floors due to limited availability. Dave and Lisa got a room on the second floor, while Jen and I were assigned to the third. The elderly porter insisted on carrying our bags up the narrow staircase, refusing to accept our help despite his age. The elevator, he explained in broken English, was not reliable. Our room was at the end of a long corridor with faded red carpet. It was much larger than I expected, with high ceilings, ornate moldings, and a massive four-poster bed that dominated the space. Heavy velvet curtains framed tall windows that overlooked a small courtyard. The bathroom had been modernized, thankfully, but everything else felt like stepping back in time. That night, we met Dave and Lisa for dinner at a local trattoria the hotel staff had recommended. We had amazing pasta, too much wine, and walked back under the stars, taking in the beauty of Florence at night. Despite the building's creepy history, I felt completely at ease as Jen and I settled into our antique bed. I remember joking that the mattress was surprisingly comfortable for being potentially hundreds of years old. Jen elbowed me, told me to stop exaggerating, and we fell asleep almost immediately. I woke up sometime around dawn. The room was dimly lit by the faint glow of early morning sunlight filtering through the edges of the heavy curtains. I'm usually a deep sleeper, so waking up this early was unusual for me. I lay there for a moment trying to figure out what had disturbed my sleep. There were no noises, no light directly in my eyes, nothing obvious. That's when I noticed something in the corner of the room, between the window and this massive floor-to-ceiling antique dresser. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me in the dim light. But as I focused, I realized I was looking at a woman, a lady, dressed entirely in white. Here's the thing that still gives me goosebumps. She wasn't standing on the floor. She was floating about a foot off the ground. I know how that sounds, but I swear I wasn't dreaming, and I wasn't drunk or high. I was completely alert, and what I saw was real. She wasn't fully solid, but she wasn't completely transparent either. It's hard to describe exactly what she looked like. Her dress was old-fashioned, long and flowing with these billowy sleeves. Her hair was light-colored, maybe blonde or light brown, arranged in some kind of updo that women don't wear anymore. Her skin was fair, almost luminous in the dim room. The most striking thing about her was her expression. She had the kindest face I've ever seen, with a warm, tender smile that somehow made me feel completely at ease. I know this sounds crazy, but I wasn't scared, not even a little bit. In fact, I felt this overwhelming sense of peace and comfort as we looked at each other. We didn't speak, she never opened her mouth, but I had this profound feeling of connection with her. It was like we were communicating without words. I couldn't tell you how long we stayed like that, just looking at each other. Time seemed to stand still. Jen shifted beside me, half asleep. Without taking my eyes off the floating woman, I whispered, "Jen, there's a lady in our room." Jen mumbled something incoherent, then suddenly stiffened as my words registered. "What?" she hissed, now wide awake. "There's a lady in a white dress in the corner," I said calmly. "She's just floating there, looking at us." Jen's reaction was exactly what you'd expect. She grabbed my arm so tight it left marks, squeezed her eyes shut, and started frantically whispering prayers under her breath. I kept watching the lady, who seemed undisturbed by Jen's fear. After a few moments, the woman's smile seemed to deepen slightly. Then, in the strangest movement I've ever witnessed, she simply drifted backward into the wall and faded away. Not down through the floor or up through the ceiling, she moved backward, as if the wall wasn't solid to her, and gradually disappeared. When I was sure she was gone, I tried to calm Jen down, telling her it was okay, that the lady hadn't seemed threatening. Jen refused to open her eyes until I turned on every light in the room. She wanted to pack up and leave immediately, but it was barely 5 in the morning, and we had nowhere else to go on such short notice. I convinced her to wait until breakfast, promising we'd talk to the hotel staff and figure something out. She insisted on keeping the lights on and made me check the bathroom and closets multiple times. She didn't go back to sleep. At breakfast, while Dave and Lisa chatted excitedly about the day's sightseeing plans, I approached the front desk. The young man working there had excellent English, so I quietly explained what I'd seen. I expected disbelief or concern, maybe even an apology for the disturbance. What I didn't expect was for him to calmly reach under the counter and pull out a form, an actual printed form with checkboxes and blank spaces to fill in. "If you would like to document your encounter, sir, we have this," he said, sliding it across the counter. I stared at him, then at the form, which had "Guest Paranormal Experience Report" printed at the top in both Italian and English. "This happens often enough that you have a form?" I asked, incredulous. He glanced around to make sure no other guests were within earshot. "We don't advertise it, of course, but yes, there are occasional sightings. The management prefers to keep a record without alarming other guests. That's why we ask witnesses to use the form rather than discuss their experiences in public areas." I didn't fill out the form, partly because Jen was already freaking out enough, and partly because what happened felt too personal, too special to reduce to checkboxes on a hotel document. But I did ask if he knew anything about a lady in white. He hesitated, then said, "There are several stories. The most common involves a nun from when this was a convent, or perhaps a nurse from its hospital days. She is said to be benevolent, watching over people in their sleep. Consider yourself fortunate. Many believe her appearance is a blessing." Somehow we made it through the rest of our stay. Jen insisted we sleep with the lights on and refused to be alone in the room. I didn't see the lady again, though I admit I kept looking toward that corner every time I woke up during the night. We never told Dave and Lisa what happened. Jen was too embarrassed, afraid they'd think she was being dramatic or silly. But I know what I saw. 3 years later, I still think about her. The Lady of Florence, as I've come to call her in my mind. I'm not religious or particularly spiritual. I've never believed in ghosts or the supernatural. But that morning in Florence changed something in me. I can't explain what I experienced, and I've stopped trying. All I know is that whatever or whoever she was, I'm grateful for that brief, peaceful connection with something beyond my understanding. Story 24. I've never been the type to share personal stuff online, but what happened last summer still keeps me up at night sometimes, and maybe writing it out will help. Plus, I think other parents need to hear this. I live in Ridgewood with my husband Mark and my 2 stepsons, Ethan, 7, and Oliver, 10. We're in what everyone calls a safe neighborhood. You know the type. The kind where people leave their doors unlocked and kids play outside until the streetlights come on. We're even right by a police station, for crying out loud. The crime rate here is practically non-existent. At least that's what the real estate agent told us when we moved here 3 years ago. Don't get me wrong, I love this place. It's picture-perfect suburban living. Our street has those big maple trees lining both sides, and there are always kids riding bikes or playing basketball in driveways. Oliver and Ethan have a group of friends they hang out with almost daily. 5 neighborhood kids who are always running around together like a little pack. But I've always been the cautious type. Maybe it's because I'm their stepmom and I feel this extra pressure to keep them safe. Mark sometimes jokes that I worry too much, but I can't help it. Especially since we're only about 40 minutes from the border and I've read those horrifying articles about human trafficking. Those stories where kids disappear in broad daylight, right from their own neighborhoods. So about 6 months ago, I bought these bright orange rape whistles for the boys. They were only $10 each at the sporting goods store. Oliver thought it was cool. He wore his on a lanyard around his neck like it was some kind of badge. Ethan just followed his big brother's lead as usual. I made them promise they'd blow those whistles if they ever felt scared, or if a stranger approached them. We practiced what to do. Blow hard, run toward home, or to a neighbor we trust, yell help repeatedly. Mark rolled his eyes at me, but he didn't interfere. Whatever helps you sleep at night, Sarah, he said. And I did sleep better, knowing the boys had something that could alert people if they needed help. Last July, during summer break, the boys were getting restless at home. It was one of those perfect summer days. Not too hot, blue sky, slight breeze. The kind of day that makes you forget anything bad could ever happen. "Mum, can we set up a lemonade stand?" Ethan asked after breakfast. He had that excited look in his eyes that always makes it hard to say no. Tyler and Mia did one last weekend and made $20. I felt this immediate unease in my stomach, the thought of my kids sitting out there, visible to anyone driving by. "I don't know, buddy," I said, loading the dishwasher. "Maybe next weekend when Dad's home to help." "But Mom," Oliver chimed in, "Dad won't be home until 5, and by then everyone will be making dinner. Please, we already made signs and everything." They pulled out these colorful poster boards they decorated with markers. Lemonade, 50 cents, written in wobbly letters. They'd clearly been planning this. I looked at their eager faces and felt that tug between wanting to protect them and not wanting to be the overprotective parent who ruins childhood memories. "Where were you thinking of setting up?" I asked cautiously. "Just at the corner," Oliver said, "where our street meets Main. That way more cars will see us." My stomach tightened. Main Street wasn't exactly a highway, but it did get decent traffic, especially in summer when people drove through our neighborhood as a shortcut to the lake. After thinking it over for what felt like forever, I reluctantly agreed, but with conditions. "Oliver, you're in charge. You watch your brother, okay? And you both wear your whistles. If anything feels wrong, if someone asks personal questions, if someone tries to get you to go anywhere with them, if you just get a bad feeling, you blow that whistle as loud as you can. I'll leave the front window open so I can hear it." "Yes, Mom," they both agreed, already racing to get cups and a pitcher. I helped them mix the lemonade, which was mostly powder and way too much sugar, and carried their folding table to the corner. I positioned them where they'd be visible from our house, about half a block away. I could see them if I stood on our porch. "I'll check on you every 15 minutes, I told them. "Don't go anywhere with anyone. Don't leave this spot. If you need to use the bathroom, both of you come home together." They nodded impatiently, already arranging their cups and waving at a neighbor walking her dog. Back at home, I tried to focus on cleaning the kitchen, but I kept finding reasons to walk to the window or step onto the porch. Each time, I'd see the boys happily serving lemonade to neighbors or chatting with other kids who'd stopped by. Everything seemed fine. Maybe Mark was right. Maybe I was being paranoid. About an hour into their business venture, I was in the living room folding laundry when I heard it, the shrill, piercing sound of the rape whistle. My blood turned to ice. The basket of clothes went flying as I bolted for the door, not even bothering to put on shoes. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat as I sprinted down our street. In the distance, I could see a flashy red car parked near the lemonade stand. Not just any car, a Dodge Charger, One of those muscle cars with the aggressive-looking front end. The kind Ethan would immediately recognize as a demon because he's obsessed with cars. All the kids were there. Oliver, Ethan, and 3 of their friends who had joined them. They were all standing behind the table, huddled together, and there was a man, probably in his 30s, with sunglasses and a baseball cap, getting back into the driver's seat of the Charger. "Oliver, Ethan!" I screamed, running faster than I ever have in my life. When I reached them, I grabbed them both, checking them over frantically. "Are you okay? What happened? Who is that man?" Oliver still had the whistle in his mouth. He took it out, his hand shaking slightly. He asked us how old we were, Mom, and then he asked Ethan if he wanted to see inside his car. A wave of nausea hit me so hard I almost doubled over. I looked at the Charger, where the man was now sitting in the driver's seat. Without even thinking, I marched over and slammed my fist on the hood of his car. "What do you think you're doing?" I shouted, adrenaline making my voice louder than I'd ever heard it. "Asking a 7-year-old to get in your car? Who the hell do you think you are?" The man's face changed from surprise to anger. "Lady, calm down. I was just being friendly." "Friendly?" I was shaking with rage now. "You don't ask someone else's child to get in your car, ever. Do you understand me?" He muttered something under his breath, started his engine with a roar, and peeled away from the curb. I was still standing there, barefoot on the hot pavement, when I realized I should get his license plate. I only caught part of it before he turned the corner. I herded the kids back to our house, my arm firmly around Ethan's shoulders. Once inside, I called the police immediately. They took about 15 minutes to arrive, even though the station was just a few blocks away. The officer who took our statement seemed concerned but not alarmed. "Did he touch any of the children?" he asked. "No," I said. "But he asked my 7-year-old to get in his car." "And you're sure that's what he said? Kids sometimes misunderstand things." I felt a flash of anger. My son knows exactly what he heard, and his brother confirmed it. The officer nodded, writing in his notebook. "We'll put out an alert for the vehicle. Red Dodge Charger, possibly a demon model with a dented hood." He looked at me questioningly. I flushed slightly. I may have hit his hood. Hard. A slight smile crossed his face. "That'll make it easier to identify." Good thinking. They searched the neighborhood but didn't find the car. I spent the rest of the day in a state of hypervigilance, jumping at every sound, checking the windows constantly. When Mark got home, I broke down crying while explaining what had happened. That night, after the boys were asleep, Mark and I sat on the porch. He wasn't rolling his eyes anymore. "You were right," he said quietly, "about the whistles, about being careful." I nodded, too exhausted to feel vindicated. "We got lucky today, Mark. If Oliver hadn't blown that whistle immediately..." I couldn't finish the sentence. It's been 6 months since that day. The police never found the red Charger. Sometimes I wonder if he moved on to another neighborhood, another lemonade stand, another child who might not have had a whistle or a brother looking out for them. The thought makes me sick. The boys haven't asked to do a lemonade stand again. Oliver still wears his whistle when he goes out to play, and now so do most of the other neighborhood kids. Parents stopped teasing me about being overprotective. I don't know if that man was a predator or just someone with poor judgment. But I do know that a $10 whistle and a conversation about stranger danger potentially saved my child from being abducted that day. And I know that safe neighborhoods aren't always as safe as we want to believe. Trust your gut. Teach your kids to trust theirs, and give them tools to call for help. It might feel like paranoia until the day it isn't.